Yes. Good evening. It's 5:45 on Tuesday, June 2nd, and I'm going to call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Crombie,
Here.
Drengler,
Here.
Jacobs,
Yep.
Owens,
Here.
Rosas,
Here.
Baker,
Here.
Batterman,
Here.
Comstock. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, approval of the minutes. A motion to approve, please.
I'll second it. Roses has moved to approve.
I move approval.
Do we have it now? Any questions, changes to the minutes? All right, all those in favor of the minutes say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Okay. Next, citizen appearances and public comment. We did receive one jot form that I will read. It's from Alex Brindenstein at 433 Bleckenheim Lane. Consideration discussion on possible action on the future of the Historical Museum operations from the COW May 19th, 2026 meeting. Thank you for the opportunity to have my written comment read at tonight's Committee of the Whole. I am a citizen at 433 Bleckenheim Lane, as well as a board member for the Historical Library and Museum. I am thrilled with the decision to hire someone for the museum, as well as the desire I've observed to have the museum reopen. I wish those involved in hiring the process the best of luck, and implore whatever urgency can be had to find another wonderful person to bring life to the Sun Prairie history. I feel it's so important in times such as these to consider more than just the numbers and the complex decisions that must be made with the future budget. I've heard many accounts of citizens that are passionate, and the through line is this: the people who wish to have their money spent on things that bring joy, inclusivity, creativity, and collaboration. I hope we will keep this in mind as we navigate the challenges ahead. All right. Unfinished business, I see none. New business. We're going to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Consideration, discussion, and possible action regarding the utilization of park acquisition fees for acquisition of conservation land around Patrick Marsh. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning to close? Roll call, okay.
Crombie,
Aye.
Drengler,
Aye.
Jacobs,
Aye.
Owens,
Aye.
Rosas,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Batterman,
Aye.
Comstock.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
Must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're
Feels good in there.
Fell asleep there. 15 seconds.
Oh, your first one.
Yeah, so I thought, I'll put that on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they did a block on me now where I wrote a quick speech for Pride Fest, flag raising. Tried to send it from this phone over to my city phone so I could print it. Right. Don put this, call it the apocalypse on it, where it won't take anything from somebody by the name of Steve. It has this. Right, thank you very much. We will now return to session for item 6C, which is his presentation on the open meeting laws by our City Attorney Kathleen McDaniel.
Good evening. Thank you. Bear with me just 1 second. I'm just rejoining open session Zoom so I can share my screen. I have violated Erin's 8 slide rule. So Erin, I'm sorry in advance. Brace yourself.
Depends how bad it is.
Thank you. Alrighty. And in.
Agenda was 8 pages. Oh, 6.
All right, then I should go into my normal presentation mode in just a second, I hope. So this is kind of part of an ongoing series of council education that we've discussed and proposed. So we won't be including these at every meeting, but we'll be including as agenda space permits. One of the things that we've talked about based on Alder Baker's referral for additional council education and like a more formal council education program is when we meet with you as new alders, we throw a lot of information at you within a very short time span. So you're still trying to figure out like, where do I park? Where is the restroom? Where do I fill up my water bottle? And we're talking to you about quorums and open meetings and public records and how to use your city phone. It's a lot to retain. And for some of you, you've been on council for quite some time, so you may not have had the benefit of that formal education, or you may have inadvertently forgotten over the years. So we thought this could kind of be a good opportunity to both remind all of you of the things we try to inform you of either through in-person meetings or documents during your orientation, but also so that the public is aware of kind of what information are you being provided with and what are the rules that apply, because these are kind of nuanced subjects that can be confusing to people. So I will not be talking about all of these subjects. Some of them will be coming from other departments. For example, Josh Clemens can talk about the zoning code far better than I ever could, but this will kind of be an opportunity for you to learn more and ask some questions. So Wisconsin has a really robust open meetings law. If you're struggling to sleep after tonight's meeting, it's 19.81 in the state statutes if you want to read it. But essentially it says that a representative democracy is dependent on an informed electorate, and the public is entitled to full and complete information regarding government affairs. And when there is litigation about this, courts have historically liberally construed the law, as is required by state statute, for public access. So basically what this means is everything we do as a government, whether that be our public records or our meetings, is presumed to be open to the public, and the public should have access to it unless there is a statutory exception. So tonight we're primarily talking about open meetings. We can definitely talk about public records later. But for open meetings, what the law requires is that meetings are open to the public. So it's in a place where the public is able to attend. We're not going to hold an open session meeting, you know, in room 215 where we're all crammed in and you have to have a badge to be able to beep in there. The meeting needs to be preceded by public notice with sufficient detail such that a member of the public knows what the meeting is about. So we can't just issue an agenda that says the Common Council is meeting on Tuesday evening. We need to issue an agenda that says the Common Council is meeting on Tuesday evening where there's going to be a second reading of the archery ordinance. That way if someone's interested in that, they'll know, oh, this is the meeting I should attend to speak on that issue. Meetings also need to be held in a place that's open and reasonably accessible. So that means both people can get in there without needing like a special badge or some sort of code or a security clearance, and that the meeting is accessible so that those who have got mobility difficulties or hearing or sight difficulties are still able to reasonably attend to the meeting and understand what's going on. So these are meetings of a governmental body, and what that's defined as under state statute is a local agency, board, commission, council, department, or public body, corporate and politic, which is either created by the state constitution, state statute, ordinance, rule, or order. So this will include council, your standing committees, your commissions, your boards, so like police and fire commission, plan commission, purely advisory bodies, so like the museum board, governmental corporations, so back when we had an industrial development corporation, that would have been included. This also includes quasi-governmental corporations, so in communities where they have municipally funded tourism, much like we do with the chamber, that can include things like a tourism board or that oversight body, as well as any formally constituted government subunit. So basically it's any meeting of elected or appointed officials that are a member of an officially created body. This does not include staff meetings. So for example, if we have a city attorney team staff meeting, that's not open to the public. But if we have a meeting of the finance committee, that is absolutely something that should be open to the public. And a meeting is considered to be the convening of members of a governmental body for the purpose of exercising the responsibilities, authority, or power and duties delegated to or vested in the body. So I referenced the showers test here and the bad key notices, which are both case law. There's been significant litigation in Wisconsin under the open meetings law. We have a very robust open meetings law, very robust access to public information. And if people feel they're denied something, there is a nice system set up for them to litigate that. So under the showers test, a meeting occurs whenever members of a body convene for the purpose of discussing governmental business, which includes preliminary decisions as well as information gathering. And it occurs when the number of members who are present is sufficient to determine a course of action, quorum. And this also includes a negative quorum. Negative quorum is one of the most frequent questions I get asked by each of you individually, so we'll talk more about that in just a second. This is also why we use what's called a bad key notice. So if you ever read like a plan commission agenda, you'll notice it says that the majority of the members of the Common Council may be in attendance at this meeting. That way, if all of you decide to go to the plan commission because you're interested in hearing about a new development and you show up, we won't have questions from members of the public that say, oh no, there was a quorum there, because we've already kind of issued that preliminary notice. So quorums and negative quorums. A quorum is the minimum number of members we need to conduct business. So in most situations, that's a majority of the body, or half plus one, unless ordinance or law requires otherwise. So a recent example where this came up is the museum board was scheduled to have a meeting. We specifically state in ordinance that they need to have 5 members of that body there in order to have a meeting. If there's less than 5, even if it's a majority, that is not a sufficient amount to act. This applies both affirmatively and negatively. So a negative quorum occurs when there's enough members to block a proposal by preventing its passage. So for example, if we have something that requires a 3/4 vote of the council to pass, and 2 of you agree, I'm absolutely not in support of this, it could still pass. If 3 of you agree, I'm not in support of this, and you meet in a concerted effort, at that point you've created a negative quorum. You know that it's not going to pass because there's enough votes to block its passage. So it's not always just a gathering of 5 or more of you. Sometimes if there's a situation where if 3 of you are together and you know that will block like passage of the budget, that could constitute a negative quorum, which would still also be a violation. And I would also encourage you, as you think about negative quorums, to be cautious when it comes to standing committees. We have a number of standing committees that have 3 of you and 2 citizen members appointed. So in that case, if all 3 of you are present and discussing the item on the committee, that's a quorum of that committee, and that is a meeting that should be noticed. The easiest way to avoid this is to not discuss business outside of a noticed meeting. That's not to say that you can't be in the same place at the same time without issuing a notice, but that if you run into each other socially, you can't be discussing city business. And I have a whole bunches of examples of what that can look like when we talk about quorum some more. So when courts are considering whether or not you convened or a quorum was present, it considers both the number of people, the quorum, as well as the number of communication back and forth as factors in determining if you were having a meeting. So I want to remind all of you that face-to-face or physical presence is not required to have a meeting. So if 3 of you are on FaceTime and that's sufficient to block something, that could be considered a meeting. If there is an email chain going back and forth, that could be considered a meeting. It includes any situation in which you can communicate and could reasonably be perceived as exercising your authority. So this can include virtual meetings, FaceTime, emails, text, social media posts and comments, social media direct messages, and things of that nature. So one area where I always want to caution alders is we've got a very robust and informed electorate. I know there's multiple Facebook groups that are dedicated to discussing city politics. You don't want to be going back and forth in alders in the comments as to how you're going to vote on that. That's not to say that you can't comment. So if someone says, when's the council meeting? By all means, say it's Tuesday at 7 p.m. If somebody says, I want to know who my alder is, here's a link to the map. That's fine. But we don't want to have Alder Crombie and Alder Jacobs getting into a dispute about like, I'm not voting for this. I know Maureen's going to and she shouldn't. And then Alder Crombie would respond and say, I'm absolutely voting for this and you're a fool for not doing so, etc. I'm picking on both of you because you're my elders. So just be cautious when you're out there. They are lucky, Aaron. Thank you for noticing. But be careful when you're having that exchange that you don't appear to be discussing something that's on the agenda and talking about how you're going to vote amongst each other. It's totally okay to be out there reading. That's a great way to be informed on how some of our constituents are thinking, but don't be getting into that back and forth with each other. And I know that sometimes residents try to goad you into having those discussions, and you can always say that I am not letting you and blame me. I'm okay with that. So what is a walking quorum? The elements would conclude it's a series of gathering amongst you. So walking quorum is literally intended to be a description of a situation in a pre-technology era where one elder might go to another elder's house, and then that elder will go to a second elder's law office, and then that elder will go to a third elder after a church service and start talking about items on the agenda. You don't have to have a full quorum all together at the same time to have a walking quorum. But if you act kind of in concert and agree to act uniformly, that can be considered a walking quorum. You also can't use a surrogate to do that, and I'll give you a whole bunch of examples of what these can and can't look like. So for example, you know that as Alder Owens, you cannot call the 3 elders sitting over there and say, hey, how are you planning to vote on this item? That's going to potentially create a walking quorum or a negative walking quorum. Similarly, you can't call the deputy city clerk and say, hey, can you please call these 3 elders and find out how they're planning to vote on an issue? That also creates a walking quorum. So we would encourage you to avoid doing that. I know that it is hard, and we'll talk some more about what that can and can't look like. I made you a whole chart of examples. Again, this doesn't include social or chance gatherings or purely incidental contact. So the example I give is always like Christmas church services are often packed in a number of different places. So if you're of the Christian faith and you're attending a worship service and you find 4 other elders there, but they're all sitting with their families, you didn't know they were going to be there, that's a non-issue. On the other hand, if you gather in the church hall afterwards and you're having a conversation about tonight's council agenda and whether or not you're going to vote in favor of the closed session item, now you've created a quorum and a problem. If 1/2 or more of you are present, the burden to prove that the gathering was social or chance will actually rest on you. So that could include you potentially having to testify that, oh, I had no idea these other 4 elders were going to be there. Or here's all the records proving that we didn't have any concerted effort to meet and have this conversation. So this is a whole hot mess of examples that I'm going to walk through. This should look somewhat familiar from the emails I periodically send you on this subject. So I didn't use real elder names here because I didn't want to offend any of you. But if we have Elder 1 call Elder 2, who texts Elder 3, who then meets up with Elder 4 to discuss dismissing me as city attorney, you've created a walking quorum. If you want to do that, that's absolutely something that's within your purview. You can call the city clerk and ask her to issue an appropriate notice, and we can discuss it at a properly noticed meeting. If there's a group text between 4 of you sharing thoughts on the archery ordinance that we have a second reading of tonight and whether or not you think it should pass, that's an issue. If we have a member of the Public Works Committee messaging the other 2 elders on that committee individually to discuss a road reconstruction contract and whether or not we should approve it, that would be considered a walking quorum. If on Monday the mayor has coffee with 2 elders to secure their votes on a development project, and then on Tuesday the mayor meets separately with 2 additional elders to discuss the project and secure their votes, we've now got a quorum created because the mayor knows that there's 4 votes in favor. So at a vote, there's going to be at least 4 votes in favor. And even if there's a 4-4 vote, the mayor's been whipping support for it, and he knows that he would break the tie on that issue. So that would then be a majority and cause action. Similarly, if you get an email about the police union contract and you plan to vote in support of it, and you all start replying all to each other, I'm also in support, I'm in support, I'm in support too. Now all of you know that that's going to pass before the meeting occurs. On the other hand, if 5 of you happen to attend the East versus West volleyball game during homecoming week, but you're not sitting together, you're not planning to be there together, you just happen to be there, and you don't discuss any city business, that's not an issue, that's a chance or incidental meeting. If 3 of you are invited to the same quinceanera of a member of the community, but you don't talk about any city business while you are there, that's not an issue. You'll continue to note that in all of these, I say don't discuss city business, because if you run into each other in a pure social setting, but start discussing city business, the issue is still there. If 4 of you attend the same religious observance and you have coffee in the social hall afterwards and don't discuss any city business, that is also fine. If 5 of you attend a Badger game and you're all sitting separately, so you're strewing throughout Camp Randall, you never encounter each other, there's no conversation, that's fine. That's probably likely happened and you're not even aware of it. Similarly, if the clerk is looking to schedule a special council meeting, which is something we send out particularly for our standing committees, and you get an email saying, is everyone available to meet Tuesday at 6? And you reply back, yes, I can. Someone else says, no, I can't. And you continue to work to get a date. That's absolutely fine. That's being done for convenience and a scheduling purpose. The issue there would come up if you're like, why are we having this meeting? Oh, it's to discuss installation of a new mural. I don't want a new mural. That's when we get into the problem of a quorum. So I would really just encourage you, the cleanest way to avoid all of this is to not discuss city business outside of a properly noticed meeting. So if someone calls you and says, I want to talk about building a new street, that's wonderful. Let's get it on the Public Works Committee agenda. There have also been some questions about public attendance and comment. So again, all of our meetings for open session need to be in a place reasonably accessible and open to all citizens at all times. The public has the right to attend and observe our meetings under state law. State law does not require public comment at meetings, but both our city ordinance and our council rules do require that we allow public comment at meetings, which is why we always have that noticed on the agenda as an item. I'm going to talk a little bit about closed sessions. We just had one tonight, and there's also been a good amount of questions about this, which is an understandable thing. So any meeting needs to begin in open session. We cannot convene a meeting starting in closed session. When we go into closed session, there needs to be a motion to go into closed session made and seconded and then voted upon by the body. And when you go into closed session prior to that vote, you need to both announce the reason that you're going into closed session, so whether it be for competitive or negotiating reasons or something else. And you also need to announce the nature of the business you're discussing. So you can't just say, we're going into closed session now and duck out of the meeting. You need to say, we're going into closed session because competitive or negotiating reasons require that we discuss the acquisition of this parkland in closed session. So negotiating about a property purchase or sale is always one of the cleanest examples. If we go into closed session and we're authorized to sell a piece of land for $3 million or more, people now know that $3 million is our price floor. We're not going to get an offer for $5 million if they know that we're willing to let it go for $3 million. Similarly, if we're trying to acquire property and you say we're willing to spend up to $50,000 an acre on this property, and then that's all done in this meeting, we're not going to be able to get it for any less than $50,000. So that's an easy example of why we would go in. There's a whole bunch of reasons under state law why a governmental body can go into closed session. These are the ones that generally will apply to the Common Council. So if you have a case subject to a hearing before the body, for example, if we ask you to non-renew a liquor license, you can go into closed session to discuss that non-renewal. Your decision still needs to be made in open session. If you're discussing dismissal, demotion, licensing, or discipline of a public employee or preliminary investigation of charges against that employee, that's something that could be done in closed session. So we will sometimes see this with the Police and Fire Commission if there's a situation where charges are filed by a resident against an officer. We can also go in to discuss employment, promotion, compensation, or performance of a public employee. This is a situation where it's kind of the opposite of what I told you at your last meeting. So at that meeting, we talked about how you're really talking about positions and what the appropriate compensation is for a position, but you're not talking about people and whether or not they're good at the position. This is where if you wanted to have a conversation about whether or not someone was an effective city attorney, you could go into closed session and have that conversation. But you can't use closed session to set compensation for a position or set a job description for a position, because that's really a public setting, and you're not discussing any specific individual there. You're discussing what is the role of this position, what is appropriate compensation for this position. We already talked about the competitive or bargaining one. Similarly, if there's truly sensitive personal information, so we'll sometimes see this in a situation where someone writes like a really long letter and asks for a hearing about waiving an we could choose to use that as an exemption to not share all their medical information. And you can also go into closed session to confer with legal counsel for the body regarding litigation. I do want to note that that has to be legal counsel for the body, so either myself, Attorney Simon Silva, or another attorney who has been hired on behalf of the city. So you can't just magically bring any lawyer into closed session and then say, okay, this is fantastic, now we're into closed session. It has to be a lawyer representing the city. And I say that because there have been councils out there who've said, oh, we have a lawyer on council, so we can just go into closed session because we're with legal counsel. Nope, you need to be with the city's legal counsel, not any attorney, and it's for purposes of discussing litigation strategy, either for a case that's actively going on or a case that we anticipate will be filed. So sanctions for noncompliance if you don't comply with this. A suit can be filed for noncompliance either by the Wisconsin Attorney General's office, by the district attorney, so in our case, the Dane County District Attorney, or a private relator, which is essentially any citizen. So if a citizen of Sun Prairie is aggrieved and believes that you held an unlawful meeting, they could file a lawsuit, they can complain to the DA and they could file a lawsuit, or the Attorney General could file a suit. Penalties for participating in an illegal meeting include a forfeiture of up to $300 for any member of the body who would knowingly attend a meeting in violation of the law. There are two exceptions to that. If you vote against going into closed session and it's later found to be an unlawful or unauthorized closed session, but you attend even though you voted against it, you can't be penalized because you voted against going into it. Similarly, if acting openly and in good faith, you rely upon the advice of legal counsel, you will not be found liable if you were found to have held an illegal meeting. So if I tell you that something is completely permissible and a court later says, no, it's not, you will not be found liable. Now, I expect after that, we're probably having a closed session to discuss my bad legal advice and what that means, but you would not be individually found liable. If an action is taken at an illegal meeting, that can be voidable by a court. So let's say, for example, you had an illegal closed session and you voted to authorize the dismissal of someone. A, that should have been done in open session, so it was clear who voted on what. But B, that dismissal could then be voided by the court. And they could say, nope, you're reinstating that employee. So practical tips for compliance, because I don't ever say an elected official say, oh, I really want to get in trouble under the open meetings law. Usually these mistakes are inadvertent or non-intentional. If you think that there is going to be a quorum present in a situation, so whether that be like a ribbon cutting, a known like quasi-municipal event, just use the JOT form that we've provided you. We've emailed out the link fairly recently, but I'm happy to send it out again tonight. It's really straightforward to fill out. It's basically like, what is the event? Where is it occurring? What time is it occurring? And we'll take care of getting that noticed for you. So for example, we just did one of those recently for a ribbon cutting. We've done them for the town hall sessions that many of you have already held. So that way you don't need to worry about, oh, do we accidentally have a quorum here or not? We've issued a notice that there may be a quorum present. I would encourage you to avoid using social media to communicate with each other or with constituents regarding city business, both because there's a potential for creating a quorum there and because you've now created a public record that we have no ability to maintain for you. So you're going to be personally responsible for maintaining all of that communication for the next 7 years. Don't create a walking quorum by kind of bouncing amongst each other to see how people are planning to vote on an issue. And similarly, I get asked this a lot. What happens if someone contacts you and you believe they're trying to create a walking quorum? You can refuse to participate. You can simply say, I don't want to talk about that right now. I know it's on Tuesday's agenda. Let's talk about it Tuesday night. I know that's easier said than done, but you're not obligated to participate in those calls if it's making you uncomfortable or you believe that it could be a walking quorum. If you have questions, please reach out either to the city clerk's office or to myself. We're more than happy to help you with figuring out, is this a quorum, yes or no? Is it something we should notice? And also, is this an issue with open meetings law where we need to add more specificity to an agenda, or you need to notice something where you might not have thought you did? So if you have any questions on that, we have got a few minutes where I'm happy to answer them. You're also always free to reach out privately to ask questions about this. Truly, both myself and the city clerk are here to help you with this. We don't ever want to see you have issues with these things, so we're hopeful that this is kind of a good reminder of what your obligations are. If you have no questions, that is also absolutely okay.
Okay. Thank you, Kathleen. Great presentation. One of the items that I think a lot of us encounter is ribbon cuttings. You hit on it here. We don't know how many are showing up to a ribbon cutting, and then all of a sudden we have a majority. Should we err on the side of thinking that we are going to have a majority and submit a jot form every time?
I don't think that's necessary because it's not very likely that you often do. I know there are times where a majority of you show up, but it's not like a truly consistent, like, oh, there's always 6 of us who are present at these. The big thing you need to be cautious with is when you're at the ribbon cutting, you're saying, hey, welcome to the city, new business, but you're not talking amongst each other about any other city business. So if you'd like to talk about your family members, your recent trip to Turkey, how nice the weather was this weekend, that's all permissible, but you shouldn't be talking about anything that's on tonight's agenda. So I think that's the cleanest way to avoid it. And people in the public can sometimes be confused about this. I know I got a complaint one time that there were 5 elders present at, I think it was either a football game or Angel Park races or something like that. I'm like, that's going to happen. Events that are popular in the community are popular with you as members of the community. So the issue isn't that 5 of you are all in the same space. The issue is that 5 of you have a concerted effort to be in the same space discussing city business, or that 5 of you are like planning to be somewhere to have these conversations. But Sun Prairie, while we are a growing city, is not, a sprawling metropolis. It is likely that all of you might be interested in attending some public events. So I wouldn't be too worried about noticing those. But again, if you're ever not sure, please feel free to submit the jot form. Whenever we get a jot form, usually the clerk's office and I will have a conversation about should we notice this, yes or no. And then we'll reply back to you and either say like, here's the notice, it's been published, or we've reviewed it and this doesn't need to be noticed because blank. And if you get that email from me or from the clerk's office based on my advice, you are covered because you relied in good faith on the advice of legal counsel.
Alder Dingler.
Yeah, and I appreciate your Facebook example, and I know that we're not going to debate each other on Facebook, but I have seen a situation before where some constituent will tag their alder and say, hey, how do you feel about this issue? And sometimes we might tell them how we feel about that issue, but would it potentially create a quorum if on the same Facebook post or possibly within the same page, multiple alders are giving their opinion about a certain topic, even if they're not talking to each other?
That could potentially create an issue because you're all privy to that information. Now, the public is also privy to that information too, but that could be a situation where, if somebody starts out by taking Alders Dringler and Owens, and you both weigh in, that's fine. But now people do know how all of you are going to vote. So if other alders start to weigh in and say, well, here's how I'm voting on this issue, now you've run into a situation where it's pretty clear how the vote's going to go prior to the meeting, which can also be very discouraging because it could be a situation where people in the public wanted to show up and give public input on the matter, but they're now seeing like, oh, look, everyone's already decided how they're going to vote. So there's no point in me showing up and giving that input. And that input could have swayed how some of you were choosing to vote. So I would encourage you, if you get tagged by one of your constituents, it's up to you whether or not you want to respond. But if you see that occurring, you don't also necessarily need to chime in. I know I've talked with several of you about how you want to manage your aldermanic Facebook pages, and you've all taken different approaches, which is fine. You just need to make sure that you're individually consistent. So I know Alder Batterman, you've said I'm going to share information here, but if you want to get a response from me, you need to reach out to my city email so that I've got a clear archive of of my communications back and forth with you. I think that's fine. I know, Elder Dringler, you sometimes will interact back and forth with people and you understand your maintenance obligations when it comes to that. So I think that's also fine. The issue we really get into is when people take the whole council, which I have also seen happen. And then if everyone would start to weigh in, which I have not seen happen, now we've got an issue where you have potentially like predetermined who's going to vote. And that is almost like using a surrogate to determine how these votes are going to come out, because you're not, you know, Casey's not talking to Bill, who's not then talking to Mike, but you are running into a situation where all of you can read it and know, oh, hey, here's how the vote's going to go on Tuesday evening. So I would encourage you from just being cautious as there's that back and forth. If you weren't tagged, you don't necessarily need to weigh in. That said, if a member of the public does contact you as their elder and say, hey, how are you planning to vote on this issue? Whether that be on email, phone call, in person, you're free to share that if you want to. You're not precluded from doing so. And if that member of the public chooses to call all 8 of you individually and see how you're going to vote, you don't know that they're doing that. And you haven't created a walking quorum because they may know how everyone's going to vote, but you don't. However, if you say to someone like, you know, hey, I need you to call each of these 5 elders and see how they're planning to vote on an issue, now you have been complicit in creating that quorum because you had that person call for the purpose of relaying that information to you. So I would just encourage you to be cautious. The biggest thing when it comes to quorums is just making sure that if you run into each other in public, don't talk about city business. Find something else to talk about. There's a lot going on in Sun Prairie. I bet you can find another subject of discussion. And again, if somebody tries talking about city business with you, it is okay for you to say to each other, hey, we all know what the council rules say. Let's get this put on an agenda. It's pretty easy to get an item put on an agenda. You can just reach out to staff and we'll take care of it for you. If you're not sure who the staff person is, again, feel free to reach out to the city clerk or to myself and we'll get you in contact. But that will be a real easy way for you to kind of avoid having those issues. And that's something for you to self-enforce amongst each other. You know, I cannot send you to council jail if you're having those conversations amongst each other. But I will issue you those periodic reminders of like, hey, here's a walking quorum and here's why we should not be doing it. And again, please use that JOT form. We tried to make it silly easy for you to fill out. You can fill it out on a phone. I've tested it both on my personal as well as my city phone. It's very straightforward. And that way, if you're not sure if it should be noticed, once you file it, you know that I'm aware of the event and I've provided you guidance on whether or not it should be noticed. Then if someone squawks you and says, hey, why wasn't this noticed? You can say, I conferred with the city attorney. She said I didn't have to. And if they want to complain about me, that's fine.
Alder Rosas.
Kathleen, I don't want to go to council jail here. I didn't know that we had one.
It's very luxurious.
What's that?
It's a very luxurious jail.
Yeah. How do you enforce that?
So that's the tricky thing because you're ultimately responsible for enforcing that amongst each other. So I know I will sometimes get phone calls from members of this body, past or present, who will say, hey, I got a phone call and I think Elder so-and-so might be trying to create a walking quorum. And my response to that is always, okay, I'll send out my email again. But you also need to tell them, I don't want to have this conversation with you. I want to have this conversation at a properly noticed meeting. We have no mechanism to like kind of enforce that against you. You have to enforce that against each other. The only people who can discipline council are other council members. We as staff cannot do it. So if, for example, I found out that the city clerk was creating a walking quorum, we could have a conversation about why that was inappropriate and why that's a violation of workplace rule. But if I find out that one of you is doing it, all I can do to you is say, hey, please stop doing this. And if you don't listen to me, I have no means to compel you to listen. You have the means to compel each other to listen.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
All right, next report of the council president. I just have 2 things. First is that this Friday at 6 o'clock in these chambers, the District 1 Town Hall will be taking place. And then next Wednesday, also in these council chambers at 6 o'clock, the District 3 Town Hall will take place. That's all I have. Report of the city administrator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of items. One is the July 8th Aquatic Center ribbon cutting at 5 p.m. So I wanted to make sure this body has that on their dance card. And then the Aquatic Center is opening to the public the very next day, July 9th. So for those that are seeing the activity at the Aquatic Center, that's when it'll be opening for the season. So a lot going on. When I talked to Chad, who's overseeing the project, there's 60 folks in there working, doing various things to get the Aquatic Center ready for that July 8th ribbon cutting, July 9th opening. So you could. The other thing I wanted to mention is there's a lot of road projects starting up. I imagine residents will have questions about which projects are happening. We have put a link on the homepage of our website that says street projects on it. So if residents want to know, what's happening on my street or the street in which I travel to get to and from, lots of information on that tab on the city website as far as road projects. And we have a lot of projects going on along some pretty busy roads with Main Street and 19 with the roundabout at Westmount. And obviously you're seeing the intersection work there at Bird and 19 and the intersection on Linrood and Bird Street. So, a lot of major projects going on. And so if your constituents are interested or you're interested, please go to the city website and find out information on that. The other thing I wanted to point out to folks is the Rotary Monument Project is in its final stages. So for those out at Patrick Marsh, you wanted to go out there and see that. It really is something to see as far as that monument that Rotary is funding and constructing at Patrick Marsh. It's a really nice overlook. So just if you get a chance to go out there and see that, there will be a ribbon cutting for that. They're thinking in July. That date hasn't been,
July 21st.
They're kind of thinking about that as a
9:30.
tentative ribbon cutting for that. But it is something to go out and check out if you're interested in doing that. So those are the items I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any referrals?
I have
Alder Comstock.
Thank you. Consequence of this morning's meeting, coffee with the mayor. It's all his fault. So this came up. There was a lot of concern on the part of people who would be considered elderly or seniors and parking. And so what I would like to do is request that probably would be Public Works, although I'm not completely sure, is that investigate the possibility of holding some sites for seniors. We have sites for disabled. We have places for people with electric cars to go, but I think seniors are also having some difficulty maneuvering. And so I'd like whoever the appropriate body is to investigate the possibility of designating some sites for seniors, we're talking about parking sites, and also to consider what constitutes a senior. Are we talking somebody 65 or are we talking somebody 75? There's a big difference there. I don't know that necessarily Social Security would buy into this one, but I think it's important for us to consider our senior citizens when we do planning of some things. I think they're feeling a little bit like they're forgotten. So I'd appreciate it if we could get a report on that, and I'd like if we can get it back in a month, that would be great.
Was that a motion?
No, that was a referral.
Referral. Got it. I thought we
I'll
had to
second
have
it.
a second.
Second.
Yeah.
I'll second. Oh, did you?
I'll
I'm
second it,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's a new
Pick
rule.
one.
that's right.
Alder Baker?
Following along with the educational side that our city attorney was talking about and the referral that I originally made, this is a new referral. I'd like to make a referral directing city staff to work with the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. If we all received our magazines this week, you saw just an absolute wonderful presentation of what can be offered to us in the way of education and continued education. Work with the League of Wisconsin Municipalities to implement a formalized onboarding and continuing education program for elected officials, utilizing the training and educational resources already offered through the League at a very low price. The program should include required introductory training for newly elected alders following the organizational meeting after each election cycle, along with ongoing continuing education opportunities for sitting council members through existing League online modules, regional workshops, publications, and educational sessions. I'd also like to request that the staff return with an implementation plan, estimated cost, available membership benefits, and recommendations for piloting the program with the current council. And part of this is that most of it's, I believe the residents expect informed and well-prepared elected officials, and this investment in education would strengthen governance, improve efficiency, and greater consistency between the council and staff moving forward. What made me bring this forward was I would have really enjoyed knowing about this last year. And I think that if that's brought in as part of the onboarding with our staff, I think it's going to save time for them. That takes away from their duties, and we already have an established process. And Megan, I have it written down for you. Okay.
Good, thank you.
I'll second it.
All right, any other referrals? None?
Pass it over
Okay,
to Megan.
need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 And opposed, same sign. Thank you.